electricity, and we want you to make the best decisions, and make for your best interest. But we really think that there are a lot of concerns with this project, and that's what we wanted to highlight today. So Noah, I think Noah's gonna wrap us up, or
bring us home.
Excellent.
Thanks, Mike. Great explanation of some complicated pricing and modeling, so appreciate that. So basically what our ask of UAM's community members, what our ask of the Heber Light Power Board is to delay further investment until an independent cost study comparison is concluded. Independent, not one that UAMS is going to put out using their selective data that could be manipulated, but something that Heber Light Power is able to rigorously go through and say, this is how it would impact our portfolio if we took on 13 megawatts of this power versus all the hydro and everything else that we currently have. How does that impact a regular ratepayer's bill? There's 11,000 ratepayers in this valley. How does that impact their bill? And just how much this could raise your power bill, that's based on a lot of different factors, and that's not a question we could answer right here, right now, but that's something that we want to be able to get from Heber Light Power and all these other UAMPS community members. We want them to go through this. We want to be able to give you all the knowledge to ask the right questions, but we're not the ones with all the questions. The ones who need to be answering this are the Heber Light Power Board and UAMPS. So they will probably vote on the next phase of this, which I believe they're going into phase 2 within the next 1 to 6 months. So sometimes these things come up pretty quickly, and we'll do our best to keep you in the loop. But really what we would like at the end of the day is to have this conversation with the Heber Light and Power Board and help them, who have probably only at this point heard from their power manager, who only hears from UAMPS, help equip them with the questions to go through a rigorous understanding of what this would mean for your energy portfolio, and what this could potentially mean for your bills. So I have the Light and Power Board of Directors up here and their emails, not to bombard them and say they're bad, because like I mentioned earlier, these are good people, these are working on behalf of us residents, but we want them to know that we want to make sure this is a really rigorous process. And frankly, we've had a hard time being, like Mike mentioned, the environmental group from the Wasatch Front. We've had a hard time getting to the table with a lot of these city councils because we are the outsider. We're concerned about this project for a lot of different reasons, but we think a concern that would resonate is the cost concern. And we want to be able to have that conversation. So I would encourage you to reach out to them on your own accord and ask these questions. Ask for a public meeting about this project. Ask for them to go through an independent cost comparison study. And one thing we have beyond you shooting them an email, we have these postcards that are up front. Basically, they say what we've been going through tonight, and we're going to be sending these to them to just let them know that there are voices within the community that are concerned about this. Because a lot of times when they hear nothing, your representatives, and on this really complex power stuff, they probably hear a lot of sounds. That sounds means to them that nobody cares, and people will start to care if their power bills go up, but we want to get there before this. So before you leave, feel free to take one of these postcards, fill it out here. We can send it for you. Feel free to email. You probably know these people. These are your neighbors. Reach out to them. And yeah, so I'm going to...
One here.
Go ahead.
So I'm Kelly Potter. I'm on the board.
Hey, see? I'm glad I was talking so nice about you.
Yeah, good thing. I was watching. No, I want to let you know we do care. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear, I'm willing to look at a study. There are some things you said that I've heard different things, so I think it'll be good if maybe we can get together with our staff and you or UMS or whoever and go through some of the concerns we've had about, you compare it to wind and solar. The battery storage is expensive, and we just recently learned that disposing of batteries is a huge expense. That our staff, we sent them to a solar plant to find out about that, and it was another expense that has not been calculated in those numbers. So I think there's just a lot of variables, but I really think that we do want to do the right thing, and it is complex, and we appreciate all your research and trying to help educate people on things that maybe we haven't heard about.
Thank you, Kathleen. Well, keep that in mind, and I'd love to open up to questions, and Mike and I will do our best to answer them.
So in terms of the decision-making process, is the Heber Light board that decides whether to opt in or out of this program?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay.
Yep.
And are all the UAMPS members considering this, or have some already jumped out?
Some have already jumped out. This has essentially been shopped to every UAMPS member. Some of the early ones to bail out were Truckee in California, St. George in southern Utah, and some of the smaller communities like Holden, these towns that are just a couple hundred, couple thousand people, said no immediately. And then they've been reapproached by UAMPS in this go-round that Mike just mentioned, this kind of scramble to make sure that...
So Heber's not locked into it just because it's a member of UAMPS? They
That's correct.
Jump off?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, we've also seen other municipalities reduce the amounts that they were originally slated. I mean, Logan, at one point, I think, was in for like 50 megawatts. That has since been reduced to 5 as a compromise between council members and the mayor. And so,
And they just went back up again, actually, Logan. I don't know what the number is. 80. They went out.
80?
I think that's because DOE had opted to buy one, or maybe more.
yeah, that's
And they said, hey,
for free. So they
do it 15 years, except they give it back to the,
With no capital cost, so that'll be cheap.
Yeah, and that is one way that UAMPS have been going back around, saying, hey, we'll sweeten the pot a little bit, we'll give you some free power if you sign up with this.
But there are several off-ramps, and one of them is if the cost went over the 65, like we've never heard a number close to 90, and right now the cap is 65, so we
never heard
could,
anything down by 40.
yeah, I've always heard, since I've been, in the last year and a half, it's always been, 60-ish, and no higher than 65, or we have an off-ramp that we can say we're out.
Question for you then, Kelly.
Speak up, please.
Okay, a quick question then. At this point, we understand Heber Light Power has invested $180,000. And when UAMPS was here and they said, oh, and you do have an off-ramp, I asked the question whether there was legal language, contractual language, and the lawyer said, no, it hasn't been written yet, which the UAMPS lawyer, the one that was here in this room,
That was a year
said,
ago or so, right?
yes. And so my question is, do we know whether that contractual language is now actually written?
Well, my understanding was there was money that was spent before I was on the board, and that money was not refundable. But then we made another investment within the last year, and that it is refundable and that the language is written. But I will follow up on that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because when they were here and they were talking about this, they talked about it in the present tense, like there is an off-ramp. And when I specifically asked, what's the contractual language, he kind of hemmed and hawed, and then said, well, it's yet to be developed.
I'll
So,
find out.
as a board member, I think that it's important that you understand it.
Well, and it's not, and I'm pretty sure, and I've looked through the power purchase agreement, and I've had an energy attorney friend look through it, and it is really solid. You guys are protected, so if you do choose to walk away from the project, there won't be any legal repercussions, but what Noah was saying and what we've seen before happen with nuclear projects is they do say, they'll come to you and it's like, well, we understand that you can walk away, but the price is going to go up. You've already invested so much money. Would you just approve just a small price increase? And that, if that happens over sort of multiple periods over the years, that can lead to willing sort of price increases. That just that you've invested so much, you don't want to pull out now. And so it's not that we think you will legally be locked in until you fully sign on. It's more like you dipped a toe in, now you're dipping a foot in, then you get your whole leg in, and you're so far into it that the thought of pulling out and losing all the initial investment, make communities hesitant. And so I think it's just something that it's just something to be cautious about, something we're trying to raise. And again, it's hard throughout this thing that, it's hard not to make it contentious. The people at UAMPS aren't bad people. All these municipal power companies really have hardworking, dedicated community members. And by no means are we implying anything nefarious. We are just purely trying to raise this on data and economic grounds with also concern for the environment. And so you know, as I just don't want it to make it seem like we're implying anything bad about the people involved in this project. Yes, sir.
You suggested earlier that we consider why brand new technology, and this is not brand new technology. It's the same nuclear reaction that goes on in the bigger nuclear plants. It's placed in a smaller container and regulated very much differently. In the big ones, you lose a pump, you bust the pipe, you shut down the whole system. In these, well-contained, well-controlled, you lose one delivery system, shut it down, move it, put a new one in. It's not a new technology at all. It's just housed in a different container and regulated by a different time-tested heat sink and other circulation type method idea. So,
And yet there's not yet been one built and operating, so it is new technology.
let me share this. I was going to share, just share this from what I've understood. It's not had the nuclear component placed inside, but they have substituted that nuclear component with electricity to build up the same pressures, to act the same as the nuclear reactor would act. It works fine. It meets all the criteria. We have yet to get the nuclear, what is it? The top guys to give us
The regulatory commission?
yeah, to give us the approval, but it meets the criteria. Safety shutdown, temperature, pressure reliefs, all these things, but the medium for making it operate, seeing that it's going to explode or work properly, was just an electric heater that brought it up to the temperature of the nuclear reactor.
Yeah, I guess when we say new technology, I would say, I guess a better way to put it is market proven. They haven't, I mean,
Well, market proven,
they
yeah,
have not operated in the marketplace, and so we don't
that
know
would be better terminology.
what the pricing is going to be.
Pricing again, I was looking at my power bill and I'm paying 7.998 cents per kilowatt hour. We're talking about possibly 6 point something per kilowatt hour. Now that may go up based on the transmission costs, but it's not going to go up much more than 794 or even our new rates as proposed. I mean, it's still viable.
I would disagree with that. I've studied the nuclear industry at length, and the industry is rife with cost overruns in construction. From 30 to 100% over cost estimates.
Well, cost and rates. Now, if we build a unit that will produce this at 8, 6.5, if it is built and if it is successful, that will have nothing to do with cost overruns.
Well, we're talking about constructing the plant. If the
Right,
plant
different
costs,
things.
if the plant costs twice what they are estimating today, your rates are going to be higher,
Okay.
and more than a cent or two.
If I can say this, Bob, you're comparing 6 cents to what Heber Light Power charges. What Heber Light Power pays for energy right now is a little over 4 cents. So 6 cents is about, not quite, I think you're paying 4.4, you probably know. But 6 cents is almost 50% more than what you're paying for, what Heber Light Power is paying for energy right now.
Well,
So don't compare it to what you're charging customers. You need to compare it to what you're paying for right now.
well,
Average.
and that changes. That changes. I mean, the market goes up.
I know what it's been for the past 5 years.
We've got some firm energy and we've
It's
got
been
some.
pretty much close to
some
4.4 for almost 5 years in a row now.
Yeah, that's fair.
And if you were to go out and do a power purchase agreement for renewable energy, the most recent ones are somewhere around 2.5 cents kilowatt hour. Compared to 6 cents.
That's out of my
Yeah.
knowledge.
But I'd be happy to send you the literature.
Don't, because I can't keep up with you, Bill. You're too much quicker.
Bill's not on
Nobody-
staff. I get to meet somebody to keep up with Bill.
But the point, Bob, is that you can't compare that to what you're charging for energy. Okay? If you bought energy at 6 cents a kilowatt hour, it would cause a rate increase.
Because that's higher than what we're paying now.
That's higher than what you're paying right now.
And the thing about this, and we'll say if and when, as the technology proves itself It's like our first computers. You used to get a computer this size and you'd pay $50, $60, $100 for it. Computers developed. As they develop, the price is coming down. This is assuming that what they're telling us is factual, and I don't have any reason to doubt it. I'm not a scientist, but I'm a thinker, and I'm a practical person. And I had a couple of questions as we talked about solar across here, solar and wind. What were your alternatives for keeping that level of energy in our power lines?
So, again, Heber Light Power does not run the transmission system. They do own some transmission lines, but in terms of the large transmission system, Rocky Mountain Power Pacific Corp, which is their parent company, runs that. And their job, as they're regulated by the FERC, the Federal Electric Regulatory Commission, is to make sure that a certain amount of power is always running through those power lines. That's base load, that's grid reliability. It's much more complicated than that, but that's kind of basic. And so what we've seen with the advent of renewables is if you combine wind and solar, they actually equal each other out really well. The wind primarily blows at night. The sun obviously shines during the day. So that takes care of a large chunk of your needs.
We don't need backup. We don't need
well, let me
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You combine that with battery storage that kind of ups your need even more. You can invest in energy efficiency technology, which will actually reduce the total demand that your community needs, thus saving you money. There's something called demand response, which actually allows you to regulate certain load sources to be able to deal with that intermittency issue. So, with a good, smart package of renewable generation options, you really can cover the vast majority of your energy needs. But to your point, we're not there yet. We can't get to 100% renewable without sort of sky-high prices. But we're pretty close. And what we're saying is, where the market is currently headed is combination of wind, solar, energy efficiency, demand response, and then peaker plants, peaker gas plants that can turn on and off in an instant. Your standard natural gas plant takes hours to start up, takes hours to slow down, it's hard to ramp.
They have peaker.
Oh, they do? You already have a peaker?
Yeah.
Well, you're already perfectly set up. Peaker plants, yeah, you can turn them on and off, and so if you do have that intermittency issue, you can deal with that. But I mean, that's why we're trying to be very upfront, is that the problem is not 100% solved. But we think by the time this technology does come in, you will be able to get to 100% for cheaper, if that's your goal.
The cost of the energy that they produce in their peaker plant is what, Emily, 4.5 cents right now a kilowatt hour?
For what?
For your peaker plant cost?
It depends on the price of natural gas.
Okay, but over the past 3 years, the average has been?
It averages around $50.
Okay, 4.5 to 5 cents a kilowatt hour?
Sure.
Okay.
But our wind is 80.
Which is way expensive.
Yeah,
What's
but
currently on the market.
that's the one that Heber Light Power bought into how many years ago? 5 or 6?
I think so.
It was like 11 cents a kilowatt hour way back then?
It's been longer than that, and it predates me starting.
Yeah, like 5 or 6 years ago at least.
Maybe
Does
more.
anybody know what the mix of power sources Heber Light uses now?
Yes, they do.
What is that? And what here?
So we have about 13 megawatts of natural gas here in Heber. We have about 1.5 megawatts of wind power.
What is the total demand, I guess, first? What's the number
Okay,
you're trying to get?
so our peak demand this summer was 43.2 megawatts.
Okay.
But your normal level is on average?
We average, it depends on the
28.
month, right, and the time of day. Average load about 25 megawatts. We do have to meet load with resources. We don't just leave it up to accounting. That's not accurate at all. We do have to bring in enough energy to meet our load, right?
So average demand is 25 or 30, and half, it sounds like almost half of that is gas.
And it's
gas
a peaker
generation.
plant, right? So we only run the peaker plants when it makes sense economically. to
And where
run.
else, where
So
what
we
are the
have
other
a
sources?
third of the Jordanelle hydro. We own 3 small hydros in the Heber Valley, about 3 megawatts of small hydro. So a third of the Jordanelle, which maxes out at about 13.5 megawatts. We have about 9 megawatts of federal hydropower. And then we also have some market power pieces that come in. We have between 0 and 12 megawatts of geothermal and solar. It's a combined plant of geothermal and solar. So depending on that plant generation and the way that's structured, we can get anywhere between 0 and 12 megawatts of that. And we recently just signed for more solar. So about 5 megawatts of solar that'll be coming in a couple of years.
Is that the?
No, that's the Red Mesa.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, so we have a high percentage of renewable power, and they're all priced differently, right? So the average is about 4.5 cents,
Right.
with some being priced in the $60 to $80 range, and some being lower in the 20. Our federal hydropower is really inexpensive.
The $60 to $80 range ones are all the older ones. You've recently looked at purchase. So what did
The
you pay?
geothermal solar is $53.
Yeah, what about the most recent solar that you brought on?
That's, I think it was $28, something like that, with an escalator.
And we have some coal still.
And we do
Right.
have coal, right?
But-
We do have Hunter
But
coal.
the point is that right now, today, the most recent purchase of solar was $28
Yeah,
compared to 60.
yeah, but the sun doesn't shine at night, Bill.
I understand that. But come on, we all know that.
I know, right, but it's not, you can't say that, you can't compare there.
But that-
But you can't
Your
compare.
power, your
Yeah, you
power
can.
is not shut off from that. You like the power to Heber Valley at night. If you have a solar, you don't lose that 5 megawatts. The utility still provides power through the transmission lines. You have to pay an hourly charge, which can increase the price.
We have to supply all of our resources for our load. We don't get to just say, well, we don't have any power coming in right now, so we'll just take whatever you'll give us. We do have to structure our load to meet, or our resources to meet our load. It's a requirement that we have.
Right, and I do understand that, but you can supply that load, a lot more cheaper than, and
Well,
make sure that's consistently,
That's not
provided.
accurate either, because then we're subject to energy imbalance market charges, right? If we're not balancing our load.
I would say even with the energy balancing charges, it's still cheaper than the $65 number.
According to the people that are independent experts in this, if you go way back to the beginning, what they talk about is if you use renewable power plus market charges, it comes in at about the same cost as what Heber Light Power is paying right now on average, including market charges. It comes in, you're paying about $44 right now on average with your peaker plants, with all of your renewable resources, with your hydropower and your market charges, right?
Well, the difference between
Is that true or not, Emily? Yes?
that are,
Your overall cost of electricity today is 44 cents a kilowatt hour.
yeah, we've agreed, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right.
That's, yeah, no doubt.
So
I guess my question is-
very similar to these numbers up here.
The market power prices aren't locked in, right? So they're gonna change depending on what market is. So they're two different kinds of products,
Yeah.
right?
We'll give the gentleman in the back the opportunity to ask
I was
questions.
just wondering how much of a percentage of our power are we looking at this, and how many megawatts are we signing up for? If this is going to be something that's going to take 10 years, are we going to be better off to look at other alternatives before spending money on this that might go defunct and not even get there? And if we're okay for now, do you know what I mean? So like what percentage and what are we looking at as far as a requirement in this that we want out of it?
It's 10. We're looking at 10 megawatts. And the concern is when the coal plants shut down. Which is
What
like,
it is, the request to pull.
yeah.
Which is another, what,
That's what-
6-7 years, something like that?
How much are
It could be
It
in the
depends,
It depends. And we're also growing at about 2% a year as well.
I'm just trying to figure out what our initial investment in
Right.
this is. Is it worth waiting that time? Not even have it come
Sure, and
online?
these are all things to consider, right? Absolutely. I mean, these are all definitely things to consider. And I'm not here officially by any means, I just am interested. We weren't invited to,
No, I'm glad to hear.
we weren't invited to officially comment,
They weren't invited.
but
Everybody's invited, it's a public meeting.
thank you. Yeah, and that's why I'm here. And so I'm not, but I'm not commenting in any official capacity. But sure, these are all things to consider. You know, you've brought up some points that maybe I would argue with, but you've also brought up some valid points for sure. And these are things that the community needs to discuss. And the more the community is involved, the better, right? With any decision that we all have to make together. So I think it's good that there's people here thinking about it. For sure.
Yes, sir.
Excuse my ignorance, but why does this sound like a good idea? I haven't really heard anybody say
Well,
this sounds
no,
like a good
I mean,
idea.
I can
My
answer.
feelings, you can share yours.
Well,
I'll
if
share mine. First of all, collectively, I think we're all looking to get rid of this carbon footprint. Natural gas has a carbon footprint. It's not the answer to total carbon-free energy. This system, like I used the computer, and Bill said, 66.5, well, you can't figure it that way. But if we just break even, and this thing develops, it grows, those prices are going to come down. We could break even on that, and I don't know the math, and Bill could probably do this, but we could break even on that for 5 or 6 years, and all of a sudden it comes down, and we say, hey, we really entered into an nest egg here. I think that the fact that this is carbon-free, it's what you want. I think, as I've been thinking, I'm sort of I want to get rid of the carbon footprint. I want to go green. We've got a green program with our power company. People can buy into that power. Why? I think it's going to work. I think when it does, not only in the United States, but internationally and across the world. I've got a thing here that I got from Romania is actually looking to get into it. I think Canada's looking to get into it as an idea, as a future. Why do we get into it now? We back out to see how it works. We're not going to be the ones that are going to be able to afford to get into it. That's another motivating factor. So those are a couple of reasons why, at least I